And what I tend to do is I tend to start with the hard surfaces and the hard straight edges. Now I'm going to be tracing these, so I usually start by tracing my curves and just kind of stopping at the curves. I'm going to try and go pretty quick here. Throw a few dots in. Again, curves are tough. What I find is it's a lot easier for me to link up straight lines into a curve than it is to go the other way around. Put down the straight lines and then match up the curve with the straight lines. So I'm just doing the hard edges. And for now I'm going to do all the curved hard edges. I don't see any other curved hard edges. I'm going to now start to move to the straight edges, and I have an order, which is I'm going to do my angles first if you want. Sometimes it makes sense to do the building profile first, because that way you don't have to trace over it. So profile. I tend to do, my order is curves, angles, horizontal lines, vertical lines. And it's just because I find that each one of those gets progressively easier. I find it easier to draw angles than to draw curves. I find it easier to draw horizontal lines than I do to draw angles, and I find it easier to draw vertical lines than I do to draw horizontal ones. And the reason for that, and I talked about this last week, when I'm doing horizontal lines I have to kind of move this bar up and down, but when I'm doing vertical lines I'm just sliding this triangle across. If you'll notice, when I'm using the fat Sharpie, I don't have my triangle on the paper. I tend to put it up here, so it's actually lifted off the page a little and it's not dragging through the Sharpie. This profile line, these, I'm going to fill that one in. Hang on. These overlaps are important. Now, you don't want to leave those trees like they are. So I've done the profile lines, and I don't have to do those. Now I'm going to do all my horizontal hard lines. Actually, I'm going to do my angles first. I've got some angles there. There's a roof angle. And I'm still putting the triangle up above the paper, because I know that fat profile line is going to take a while to dry. I'm going to go ahead and do my horizontal lines. I don't like the sound of that. Oops, that's not good. Hopefully that'll hold up. I don't know what caused it. Sometimes you'll get little pieces of Grundu stuck under your straight edge and it'll rip the tracing paper. And if the tracing paper does rip and you don't feel like starting over, I would recommend throwing some tape on it. You could almost use Scotch tape, and if you're lucky when you scan it you won't see it, but I don't have any Scotch tape handy. And I got this masking tape on, but if I were to scan this or photo it, I could just take that out and GIMP. So again, let's just do all those horizontal lines. There's the steps, there's the sidewalk. Alright, so when I'm coming for this one, it looks like I'm a little off. So you notice I bent it a little. I can tweak that bar a little, get it where I like it. I put a dot, and then I do my straight line. Okay, I don't try and join up the curve. You know, someplace there's going to have to be a road here. We're going to finish that off. I'm going to guess it's going to be about that wide. Just to let me know where my road ends. Alright, so I've done all the horizontals. Now I'm going to go to the verticals. And again, with the verticals, I can just bang them right out. They just tend to go a little faster for me. Because moving the triangle is easier than moving the bar. What I just did there is I went backwards over my ink. That's a dangerous thing to do. You'll learn. How many people smudge their drawings? I didn't even look.
No, I did.
Yeah, it dragged your triangle through wet ink? Yeah, it's you get used to figuring out how to work so you don't tend to do that. For example, I missed this line. I'd pick it up, pick the triangle up, push it down where I want it, get that line in there. All right, I've got all my vertical lines, I've got all my horizontal lines. What would I do next? Next thing I would do is I'd look at these trees. Some of them are off the page, some of them are cut off in printing. I'm going to want to keep some of them, but I would lightly just mark out, just get close. That one, sure, I'll do this one, I'll do that one, I'll leave that one off. And you can just, and I don't have to be super accurate because I'm going to be tracing over them anyways. Alright, I'm going to go right around the outside edge, line W. What did you folks find, what was your biggest struggle when you were doing your drawings last week? What did you dislike the most? Everybody thought it was all just awesome.
Shadows on the building.
The what on the building?
Shadows on the building.
You struggled on that one?
Yeah.
It's well, is this your first time using drafting equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a while, and in the beginning some folks want to just do everything freehand, you know, including the building and the shadows of the building, I mean. And what folks don't realize is once you get used to using your drafting equipment, it's actually much faster than freehand. Believe me, if drafting were faster freehand, they would have freehanded the pyramids. Because it's all draftsmen are usually under enormous pressure to get stuff out, and their bosses will do anything they can to make them spend less time doing the physical act of drafting. So they actually came up with the equipment not only for accuracy, but also because it's quicker to use the equipment. But it takes a little while. That's where, by the way, your overlapping corners can be really helpful, because you don't have to be hyper accurate with your lines. You just kind of get it close and let them shoot right past it. A fair amount of trees here, but we're making progress. Again, I'm drawing my clumps of trees, not individual trees, unless there are a couple individual trees, but anytime there's a clump, I'm just going around the edges of the clump. the trees take a while. That's okay. I'm gonna throw in a couple different ones here. Some of these smaller trees. What I'm gonna do is I'm just doing a little hairy outline here. Now I will at some point tonight walk around and check your sketches. Did you guys have fun drawing some of the trees in plan?
I did.
Yeah, did you find some ones that you really liked?
I did. I actually enjoyed drawing those than the sketches of the trees as they are.
Trees as they are is really hard.
It was. And
What-
I tried to time myself, but I feel like I'm being rushed. So it looks, to me, it looks sloppy almost. Kind of.
It's
But maybe that's the idea of the.
yeah, it's you will all come up with your own graphic tree for when you have to draw trees or graphic techniques, but you really have to come up with some way of just kind of drawing the big blocks of space, because you can't. Do you draw the leaves? Do you not draw the individual leaves? Do you draw a clump of leaves? You could spend, well, again, I mean, there are people that spend years doing landscape paintings of a landscape, and trying to do a photorealistic sketch of a tree is really hard. All right, I'm going to do these trees. I'm going to do little W's, and I'm just doing, they're kind of like little explosions. I'm making the W's point towards the center of the tree. Just add a little variety to it. They look like little sunshines when they're done, sort of. Now, again, in the past we've done these 11 by 17, which would take 4 times as long, because it's really 4 times the area. It doesn't always take 4 times as long, but it takes a lot longer. But you have to kind of try and figure out how to get detail in at this small without making a lot of blob. See, those little sunshines kind of look kind of nice, and it changes it up a little. So it's not all just my cheap trees. Okay, I got a couple more over here. This one I'm going to put a couple cheap trees. The bigger these guys, as they're not particularly big, but I'll do those as little cheap trees, and then I'll just throw a couple curlicues in for the little ones. Again, they're pretty small at this scale, so I don't know if that's supposed to be anything, but we're going to put another tree there. It's a circle. So let's call it a tree. Alright, I'm going to go around. I'm going to get my mulch beds with just a kind of a line and a W. And this is just going to be one line and a W. The beach, I'm going to do kind of a similar thing. The water I'm going to be a little more loosey-goosey with for now. And just kind of dribble that off a little bit. Mulch bed, W line. After I get these mulch beds in, what should I do next? What would you do next?
Dot trees.
Could do that. Let's do it. See, and when I'm doing this, just putting those dots in, even if I didn't get to branch the trees, the little dots give them a little character, and it's not like it takes a long time to do it. What would you do next? Trees are dotted. I know what I would do next is I would put that second line around my hard edges. Obviously not the profile of the building, but I'm staying kind of close to it.
So are the mulch beds not considered a hard edge?
The mulch is not considered a hard edge. So with the hard edge, what I'm trying to do is I've got the hard edge of the asphalt next to the soft edge of the ground cover. The mulch, I'm just doing a dividing line. So I wouldn't double line that if that's what you were thinking.
So would your beach be a hard edge then, or no?
Nope, I'm gonna leave that one
Same.
just like that,
Okay.
one line. You know, it's pretty much my hard edge line. I'm gonna do one around my kind of wooden
Pavement or
patio
concrete,
deck.
anything that needs a soft surface.
Yeah, if it's,
Okay.
I mean, again, the main place I use this is and even though I'm kind of faking those ends, I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Yep. A line of lines there. Okay. Next, I'm going to do some of the tree branches. I say that and then I always wind up wanting to do them all. Starting with the big trees. I try and have, like if I got a big tree next to it, you know, bumping into a little tree, I try and do the big tree first. Like for example, here I got this clump, so let's
Would you normally do the littler trees a different style? Would you do the littler trees a different style?
I'm gonna leave the little trees just like
no.
that.
How would you have like the bigger circles and then the smaller ones?
You know, you could. It's I tend to be with me it's all about lots of trees in a hurry. So I tend to draw them all the same, but I think mixing up a few of those or some other style in there could be actually really nice. And for what you guys are going to be doing later on, you know, it could really highlight some special element that you put into your design. See, and again, the overlap gives the trees character, and the overlap means I don't really have to think super hard about when to stop my line. I just kind of just keep drawing, go really fast, and going fast will do a couple things. One, if you've noticed, it's kind of giving me a hit-go-hit line. And you wind up with this blob of ink in the middle and then a blob at the end, which is fine. You know, some of the dots weren't exactly on center. That's okay. what are we gonna do next while I'm doing this?
Shadow.
That's where I would go to. So what happens is, you know, at each step of the way, if you said, okay, I gotta stop in 2 minutes, the drawing is gonna look finished. You know, to some point, you know, even before I put these in, just doing that, you know, could look like a somewhat complete drawing. I got all the trees, yes. Someone mentioned shadows. Alright, I'm gonna do my building first. Now, I tend to like to really focus on, by the way, these are not super accurate shadows. I'm just going down and to the right. But on the building shadows, try and be as crisp as you can. When I say crisp, I mean I want it much like the building itself. See, the tree shadows are loosey-goosey. I'm going to put those in freehand. The building shadows, I don't want to do them freehand. I'm going to do them with my straight edge to try and make them look nice and crisp. Because, you know, you got a hard object casting this shadow.
Now, are you overlapping the shadows?
I did a little bit in the corners.
I was gonna say you did do.
That one you want to be, oh, see, I just made a smear there. Watch this. It just got a little bigger, but you wouldn't notice it. Close enough, so you can see it grabbed right underneath my triangle. Alright, so now I've got the building shadows done. You could put a shadow on this, but I wouldn't. I would just leave that be. You're just trying to pop the building up. Trees. Oh, look, I forgot those guys. They felt sad. What I liked about the cheap trees that you guys did last week, you kind of got a sense of how to do the just light lines, the random order of the lines. It didn't look like you were trying to draw stars or anything. They were just irregular enough so it looked good. Alright, shadows on the trees, fat Sharpie, down and to the right. So you can always start, you know, down is always pretty straightforward. Down to the right. When you get clumps of trees, sometimes you just don't know where to stop. I'm just wailing on that. You know, don't be afraid of the shadows, because as we saw when we hung these up, that's what really makes things pop. Oh. I don't put a lot of shadows by those trees. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So for this hedge, I mean, I'm just going to put a couple little dots down and a little bit to the right. Just a couple little ones. Because it's going to look like a huge blob if I don't. If I try and put a shadow around all those, just hint at it. People will get a sense of it. Alright, what's next? We've got the shadows in. What would you guys suggest next? Any thoughts? Oh, here. Let me do something. sometimes it's good to do this. So you can kind of get a sense of what might be missing or where we want to work on it. I mean, I would go to the property line at this point. I do save that till kind of towards the end because I just like what it does. But if I got the property line in, being very careful not to go through my trees. And there are a lot of trees on this property line, so there's not much property line left, and that's okay. It just kind of frames the drawing a little bit, but I still like having those. Thoughts on what we should do next? That's exactly what I would do. I might also try and put some texture on that deck, but we'll see. So the grass, which is my big texture, a couple things. You know, one, try and go fast, because what that will do, so I kind of lay one line down there. That one got a little, okay, so I've gone kind of quick. Now the next one, I don't want to just make them go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to have a little more variety in it. There, I got kind of carried away, but that's okay. The more irregular they are, kind of just put some woogles in them. Woogles is a technical term, but it's like, you know, a few of those woogles and.
The idea of elevation.
Well, it's, you know, I'm not even trying to, because this could very well be a flat piece of land. It's more as filler. You know, it's a graphic filler. You know, because I mean, I could put grass texture on this, and I'll show you some grass texture in a minute. Real grass texture, more of a. But I'm also trying to go, you know, have a line come all the way down. So if this line starts at the bottom, I want to carry it all the way up to the top. Maybe even a little curve on it. Okay, so now I've got all those lines in. Now I just go and, you know, do 1, do 2, do 1, do 1, do 2, do 1. And where it gets near the end here, I'll put kind of these half lines so it doesn't just stop. I need a line there bad, I don't know why. 2, and now I'm gonna, you know, I'm going between these lines, but I'm not going exactly between the lines. Let's put one there, and then we'll put 2 here. You know, we're just trying to the whole purpose of these grass lines, again, are to just fill in extra space. And do it quickly. Now, I haven't looked at you folks' homework yet. I will. But I'm curious to see how lettering in GIMP went and how much or little lettering you put in. When in doubt, stop on the grass. You can always add more. You cannot really, once it's in, you can't really get rid of it. And you can kind of see that filled up all that space. And it was quickly, and all of a sudden it starts to look a little more complete. Other texture, all right, I've got a sand beach, I've got a driveway, I've got this concrete walk in the front. So the driveway, I'm just going to put, here's the golden tip on putting texture on stuff. Rather than try and texture a whole anything, aim for the corners. If you do a little bit of texture in the corner and then kind of feather it out, all of a sudden it looks like you've textured the whole thing. And you've done it in 1/1000th of the time. I mean, you could stipple this whole driveway. Good luck to you on that. It probably wouldn't look well. So aim for the corners. For example, I want to put a little texture on this deck. I want to put some angled like boards on it. But rather than do the whole thing, I'm going to try and get my pen to actually write. I'm just throwing a few little lines. And all of a sudden you kind of get a sense that there's something going on there, but I didn't have to draw diagonal lines across the whole thing. I've got a concrete walkway here. I put one here, and I put one here. Now, for a grass texture, what you can do is you can kind of do sort of what you did here. You can add a few little straight lines. And what that's going to do, and again, you'll notice I'm aiming for the corners. And I'm not trying to fill the whole thing up. I'm bleeding it off a little. And I call that feathering my texture. What you don't want to have, you don't want to be able to really see the edge where I started and stopped. I do a few, I carry a couple dots out. The next line below it, I don't put quite as many in there. I'm going to do some over here. And again, I'm aiming for the corners. So draw 4, and then here I'll just draw 2, and then here I'll draw 6. And it just hints at there's a little bit of grass there. And like I said, you could do the whole drawing with that texture, but it's a lot quicker to do that. Any places in the drawing where it really looks like it needs a little love, sometimes I'll throw in some of this texture. Just to kind of highlight that there's something going on there other than the tree. I could beat this up here I'm going to do my sand beach. Again, corners, I'm going to stipple it. When I stipple, watch what I do. 1, 2, 3 close together, 1 far away. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and stop. When you stipple, you're trying to make again a clump. We're not trying to stipple the whole thing, but you do a couple dots and then you spread them out further. Think of it like, I don't want it to look like this, but you're almost trying to go I love stippling, by the way. I've done whole.
I actually did a lot of it back in high school. I
You
used to
could,
draw a lot.
you do like portraits and stuff like that?
Yep.
Yeah, I did a wedding present for some friends of mine. They just loved it. Took me like a summer. I was working graveyard shifts at the cop shop dispatching, and I would bring that thing in and just dot, 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 dot. But you're trying to get it to just feather out. Now, and I think that's not quite as feathery as I want it. The problem being, I don't want to do this on the drawing. So what I do is I'll do 3 or 4, do one far away, do a couple more far away, maybe add a couple more in there, and call it good. And that'll, it's a fine art to. Anybody here into telescopes for astronomy?
My brother-in-law has one.
Does he?
Yeah.
That's a globular cluster. It's called a globular cluster. The Hercules cluster looks just like that through the telescope. It's pretty cool, actually. So that's kind of where we're headed. The only thing left to do now is I've got to figure out where to put my scale and where to put my north arrow. And I'm not going to write the letters in, but where it was before was kind of on the road. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the road. I'm going to put my scale over here. Maybe I won't. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm going to get the drawing straight. Kind of line it up there. I want to move it up a little. That looks pretty good. Alright, so I go ahead and do a double line here, at least for the bottom half. Single line, double line. I'm not going to be able to do that or I'll rip my paper, but I can go ahead and do straight lines without the bar here. And last but not least, I need a north arrow, and that's too far away. So, and you know what? As I move that, I saw I don't have much of a line there, so I'll fix that. I would try not to totally trash my drawing. I would put that north arrow like here, but I'd put it up here, and I might even consider making it a little bigger. Too big. Just right. If you're going to use your template with ink, make sure your pen's straight up and down. Throw a couple dots in there, and try not to go over it a lot, because each time you go around it, it's going to potentially get bad. Close enough. All right. Did I forget anything that I should put in there? I mean, here's one thing I would do. I would go ahead, for these lines of the roof, I would just put a double line there to really make the fact that that's a separate roof stand out. In addition, I would put a shadow on the chimney. It's just a little fella, but kind of makes that chimney pop up a little bit. I'd call that fine for now.